Hello, I'm Channing Jones, creator of the board game Galactic Era. In this video, I will be explaining the rules for the solo variant of the game. If you don't know the regular rules yet, please watch my other video in this channel. So in the solo variant of the game, you will be playing alone against two automas, two automatic players, which will be, what they do will be determined by the rolls and dice result. So in this version of the game, you will use the two dice and you will use this Slaver's offboard power track. Those are the components specifically for the solo variant. So you have two automas. One are the genetic farmers. They are the peaceful traders in the game. They just travel around the galaxy with individual ships. They don't take any stars. They don't attack you or anything. And you can trade with them if you want. The slavers, however, those are the very evil slave traders in the game. They are a threat to you in the game. So they will build up large fleets, they will take stars, and they will most probably attack you in the game. And if you just let them grow, they might become too powerful for you and they might overwhelm you. So one important concept for the game is that of random selection. So whenever the rules tell you, give the automas multiple possibilities to select from, you need to randomly select from those multiple possibilities. So if, for example, the rules say this ship moves to one of the nearest neutral stars and there's 3 neutral stars where the ship could move to, then you need to select randomly between those possibilities. So in this case, there's 3 possibilities. You count each possibility, maybe pointing your finger at it. And so in this case, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 3 possibilities. Then I roll the die, and then the die roll tells me which of those possibilities is selected for the automa. So 5, 6, the automa goes here, or rather stays at that star. Likewise, if the rules say the automa selects one of their technology fields to research, there are 5 technology fields, 1 through 5, I roll the die. That's the technology field they research. If I roll something that is not within the range of possibilities, then I just re-roll the die until I get the number within that possibilities. So that happens with everything whenever there are multiple possibilities. You set up the game as if for 3 players, except that you take your home star sector like this, and you just add 1 sector to a side like that. That sector you set up like as if it were the center sector, and this sector you set up as your home star sector. You use 3 wormhole counters and you place them like this. So at your home sector, at the 2 edges like this, and at the far edge of the so-called center sector, you place the 3rd wormhole counter. There are no functioning wormholes in the game. These hexes are just marked like this because those are the spawning points where the ships of the automas will appear. You give a color to each of the automas. The genetic farmers get their technology track, their individual ship pieces, and their growth action counters. The slavers and nothing else. The slavers also get their technology track, their entire population track with all their population, the new offboard power track, all their ships, all their fleet counters, and all their growth action counters. All the remaining components for the automas are not used. Each of the automas will also get a starting bonus, which you will determine by rolling a die and checking the table here. So in this case, I rolled a 1 for the slavers. That means they get military level 3. And you roll also a die for the genetic farmers. In this case, I also rolled a 1, so they get military level 2. Then you complete your own setup as normal. And you picked a war peace counter for each of the 2 automa colors in the game, placing the peace side face up. You don't need any more of these because the 2 automas are always considered at war with each other. Then you need to pick a difficulty level that you will play at. There's 4 difficulty levels in the game: easy, standard, hard, insane. Those are equivalent to numbers 0 to 3. You pick your difficulty level and you mark that number on the points track with the scoring counter for the slavers. And this may also include removing discs from the population track of the slavers, and you add those discs to their offboard power track, filling it up left to right. I will explain later what that is for. As I said, you play a normal game as if with 3 players, so the automas take their turns as a normal player, except that you will be instructed by the rules and the dice as to what they will exactly do. So there's a table at the back of the rulebook, which is, there's both a movement table and a growth action table. So whenever the automas do their turn, you roll a dice and you look up in the table what exactly they will do. So if, for example, the slavers, it's the genetic farmer's turn in the movement phase, I roll a dice. This is a 2. It says here, for the 2 result in movement of the genetic farmers, each ship moves to as close as possible to the nearest star. And then I do that for each individual ship of the slavers. So in this case, the nearest star is either that star or that star. Again, I roll a dice to determine which of the 2 possibilities. They, in that case, go here. Here they have 3 stars, 2 stars they can move to. They don't pick the one they're already at. Then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then that's the star they move to. Whenever the slavers move, I pick the same target for each hex. So instead of individual ship, I go through each hex where the slavers have ships, and then I do the selection, possibly using a die for that hex, and then all the ships in that hex move together to the same target. So that's how the automas use. The automas don't use stargates, and there are no, as I said before, no wormholes in the game. The slavers will always use the planetary depth ray if they have that. Then in the combat, if there's combat, the genetic farmers will always retreat before combat if they can. The slavers will retreat before combat if they can on a die roll of 1 to 3. If the genetic farmers win a battle, they will always choose to destroy no ships. If the slavers win a battle, they will always choose to destroy all hostile ships. Then whenever the automas need to move in a certain direction and they can't move any further in that direction because they reach the edge of a sector, then they just stop, then they just end their movement there. Then there's the growth action phase. As I said, automas do the turn as if they were a player in the growth action phase using the table here. So what happens in the growth phase is that you first select your own actions, so you pick your own counters that you want to play, and then you roll 1 die for each of the automas, and that's what they will do on their turn of the growth phase. This may include changing turn order. You change turn order immediately in the change turn order step of the growth phase. So there's a few special things in the growth phase. Whenever the slavers need to gain a star, because it says so in the rules, and they can't for whatever reason, because they're not at a star or their stars are blocked, then instead take a population from their population track and add it to their offboard power track, filling it up left to right. I will explain later what that does. Whenever in the growth phase the genetic farmers have no ships on the board at all, then instead of rolling a die, you just pick the die result 6 instead and do that. That spawns a ship for them. The spawning ship actions is a special type of growth actions that only the automas do. This action cannot be blocked by you. The only thing that can be blocked is the contribution of population to that action. This action gives automas ships at one of the wormholes. So if the genetic farmers gets a spawn ships action, then they get 1 ship at one of the 3 wormholes. You again roll a die to determine which of the 3 wormholes they get that ship at. When the slavers spawn at a wormhole, they get a certain number of ships as followed. First, you check their population track for the ship number there. In this case, that would be 3 ships. You add any robotics bonus they have, for example 1 in this case, and you add the difficulty level as you determined at the start of the game to that. So in this case, that would be 3 plus 1 for robotics plus 1 for difficulty level. That would be 5 ships, which you would add to one of the wormholes. You again determine that randomly, which that wormhole is. If there are multiple wormholes you need to spawn at, then you pick 2 different wormholes where they will spawn. The slavers always use ship pieces if they can. If there's not enough ship pieces for them to spawn at a wormhole, then you use a fleet instead. You don't mix ship pieces and fleets when spawning, so you take that number of ships as hidden ship pieces, in this case 5. You take a fleet counter, which you select randomly, face down. You don't look at the fleet number, and you spawn them at a randomly selected wormhole. If there's already a fleet in that wormhole, then you don't create a new fleet. You instead just add the ships to the already existing fleet in that wormhole. Then there's a couple extra things. The slavers always use the ×2 side of their advanced fleet tactics. And as I said, whenever they need to research something random or gain a level, they pick between all the possibilities where they can get a level. If they're already at level 6, then they can't go any further in that level, and they don't pick that level. Also, the slavers do not go beyond level 4 in spirituality, no matter what. Then there's declaring war. So the genetic farmers never declare war, and the slavers only declare war when it is explicitly mentioned in their result of their movement or growth action table. As I said before, the genetic farmers and the slavers are already automatically at war with each other, so that means they will actually fight with each other if they're in the same hex with each other at this end of their movement. You can also make peace with the automas. So once per round during your turn or your trading phase, you can attempt to make peace with each of the automas. The genetic farmers will accept your peaceful offer on a die roll 1 to 4. And the slavers will accept your peace offer on a die roll of 1 to 2, unless they have 2 or more population here. This triggers certain special effects. You can also trade technology with the automas. The same conditions apply as in a normal game, so you need to be at peace with them and you need to be in contact with them. If you are STO, the genetic farmers are automatically willing to trade with you. If you are SDS, the genetic farmers will trade with you only on a die roll of 1 to 4. You can trade with the slavers if you are STO on a die roll 1 to 2, or 1 to 4 if you are SDS. When trading with an automa, you just pick one of the technology levels you can get, and you determine randomly which technology they get from you. As I said before, there's this offboard power track which you fill up during the game, and it triggers special effects whenever that spot is filled. So the first spot does nothing. The second spot makes it so that you can't make peace anymore with the slavers. Starting with the third slot filled, the slavers will automatically get a technology level in each trading phase in which they don't trade. Starting with the fourth disc, you always roll 2 dice for the slavers whenever you do movement or growth actions, and you pick the lower result. The lower numbers are worse for you. And starting with the 5th disc, you always lose 5 points every time that happens. The automas do not use domination cards, and they also do not score points. They can prevent you from scoring points though. So if, for example, at the end of the game, the slavers have more ships in a sector than you, then you don't score the 4 points for that sector. Note that you need to have at least 1 ship in a sector to score the 4 points in a sector at the end of the game. You can also play with galactic goals if you want. There's 3 galactic goals that have different rules. When you use the solo variant, that's cooperation, discovery, and leadership. Check the rulebook for what changes. And then, so at the end of the game, then you add up your points and you check up this ranking table to determine how well you played. There's 5 different ranks from lunar to cosmic. Cosmic, you reach cosmic if you score 150 or more points. At that level, I would say, if you reach that level, you have mastered the game. So, have fun.